Hey everybody, Ed Homewood. I hope everyone's doing well today. I hope you find this video to be fascinating. It's been a very fascinating review process for me with this particular product, the Chesky Audio LC-1 bookshelf monitor speaker system. Now they sell for $996 a pair plus shipping. Chesky Audio is a direct-to-consumer reseller, so there will be a link to their website in the pinned comment and in the video description. I have no affiliation with them, but go there if you want to find out more details. The basics of it are, it is a very compact speaker. It is 8 inches wide, 10 inches tall, 10 inches deep, but it weighs 18 pounds. We'll talk about that in just a second. It uses a 1-inch soft dome tweeter surrounded by this interesting pattern on either side of the tweeter, and it's called tessellation. We're actually going to talk about what tessellation is and why it's there. Uses a 6.5-inch polypropylene woofer with a very nice rubber surround, but the cool thing is it has two inertially balanced 8-inch passive radiators, one on either side of the cabinet. It's a very fascinating design. Now, as I mentioned, it is quite heavy at 18 pounds. It is a 3D printed cabinet. Frequency response is 50 hertz to 20,000, 86 dB sensitivity, and it's a nominal 8 ohm impedance. So again, it is 3D printed. It is all built here in the United States, hand assembled, and actually they're more or less built to order. And again, there's more detail on the Chesky Audio website. But let's talk about the background of these speakers. Well, many of you may recognize the Chesky name. David Chesky is a very famous musician, recording artist, engineer, kind of an impresario. He had Chesky Records for a number of years. He recently sold it, started a new record company called the Audiophile Society. Remember, the dog knows. Anyway, so we all know David Chesky. I think I got my first Chesky recording probably back in the mid to late 80s. So really highly regarded, very, very well-respected musician, recording engineer, and he does some amazing recordings. We're going to talk about some a little bit later, believe it or not. Well, these speakers are a product of his son, Lucca. Now, Lucca is 17 years old, and he actually is a fascinating young man. He started playing piano at 3. He later studied guitar and drums, but his kind of budding interest in speaker technology and audio technology grew out of building headphone systems during middle school and experimenting with high-end loudspeakers. Obviously, his father, being in the industry, had some amazing audio equipment that Lucca grew up with. And at one point when David Chesky went to replace some speakers he had a pair of Verity Parsifal floor standers, which he gave to Lucca to play with. And that's kind of what sparked Lucca's interest. So in 2024, Lucca attended Princeton University 3D Audio and Applied Acoustics Lab. And this is where he was introduced to advanced spatial audio research. So while at Princeton, he built his first prototype. He called it the LC-1. It's a different speaker. It was a compact two-way using some spare drivers, and he printed the cabinet on his home 3D printer. Well, after more than 20 different design iterations, the LC-1 that we see here debuted at the Capitol Audio Fest in November of 2024. And I'll tell you, I was there. The response from everyone at the show was absolutely amazing. Everybody was taken, not only with the sound quality of the speaker and the way it's constructed, but Lucca Chesky himself. He is a very, very smart young man, very engaging, really interesting gentleman. Now, currently, Lucca is off at Carnegie Mellon University studying acoustic engineering. His whole idea behind this was, in designing these speakers, and he's got some other designs in the works right now, is to kind of democratize great listening experiences. He wanted everybody to be able to hear music. And, you know, growing up with his father, his twin sister, Paloma, is an amazing vocalist, and we're going to talk about her in a little bit. So he grew up in that music family, always music going on, always, and going to his dad for recording sessions, listening to his father, listening to music at home to figure out how he wants to edit it or record it or whatever. So he was immersed, I mean, literally in audio since he was a young man, or a small boy, I should say. And so it's a really, really interesting thing. So what I want to do is talk about kind of the technology behind this, and we're going to talk about tessellation. So each LC-1 is actually built by hand. There's no circuit boards in this. All the crossover networks are hand wired and silver soldered and everything else. And the cabinet is fascinating. It is 3D printed. So the material that's used in the printer is extraordinarily dense, which means these are heavy for their size, 18 pounds. And very inert. Now the other interesting thing, and I can't take it apart to show you, but the inside of it, there are no parallel surfaces. So there's no chance for resonances to develop. So it breaks up all standing waves and so forth and so on. And by eliminating those cabinet resonances, you get a truer, pure sound, the actual performance of the crossover and the speakers itself. And again, at less than a cubic foot in total volume, this thing's amazingly well built. As I mentioned, inside there are no parallel surfaces, but you'll find high quality film capacitors, solid internal wiring, silver solder connections, good, simple, high quality choices. They're really meant to keep the signal path clean, to get out of the way of the music, honestly. Now, the other interesting thing is, and I'll turn the speaker a little bit, is these 8-inch passive radiators. Now, on the Chesky website, they call them 8-inch fluid coupled passive radiators. So it works kind of like, the design is to kind of mimic a transmission line in its low frequency response. So the idea is to give you more low end reach than you'd normally expect from a speaker this size, and I can attest to that. Now, we talked about this pattern on either side of the tweeter, and it's called tessellation. And it's made up it's a pattern made up of shapes that fit together perfectly without any gaps or overlaps. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle that could go on forever. Obviously, there's just a pattern here meant to fit this baffle in this particular driver. So you'll see tessellations in nature. A honeycomb is a great example of a tessellation. If you are familiar with M.C. Escher and some of his drawings, the interlocking birds and fish and things like that, that's a tessellation. In everyday life, we see it. You go in your bathroom and you see bathroom tiles and, brick walls, and even certain fabrics have a tessellation to them. So mathematically, tessellations often use regular polygons like triangles and squares, hexagons, because those shapes can repeat and fill spaces evenly. A bit more complex regular shapes can tessellate too, as long as they fit together kind of just right. So this pattern, and I'll include some close-ups of it, is a really interesting thing. So the idea is as sound moves across the baffle of the speaker from the tweeter, hits this tessellation, and it's a diffraction. It breaks it up so you don't get any baffle step or any baffle distortion from it. It's really, really cool. So let's take a moment, talk about how I tested it, some of the music I used, and my thoughts. So I tested the LC-1s in a number of different ways. I've had them for a month or so. I used them on the desktop and I used them in the big studio. On the desktop, they were remarkable. I had them sitting on the Acoustics apparatus. And then I used it with a variety of different headphone amps, preamps, DACs, things like that. But I always used the Cambridge Audio MXW70 as the amplifier, and that was a great pairing. That's 70 watts a channel into 8 ohms. These things are marvelous on the desktop. They are so small. Remember, they're only 10 inches deep. So you can, and because they're passive radiator sealed box, you can push them right up against the wall, no problem whatsoever. Maybe get a little bass reinforcement, which isn't a bad thing, because remember, they only play down to about 50 hertz. So they were great on the desktop. Beautiful sound, near field, just marvelous. The imaging, we're going to talk about that in a second. Well, in the studio, I tried to use them with more price-appropriate equipment. So yes, I did run them on the big advanced Paris A12, but that's way more expensive than you'd normally pair with these. I did run them on the Cambridge Audio EXA 100. That was a really good pairing, but again, at $2,200, that might be a little bit more expensive than you might normally consider pairing with these. I did, just because everybody's going to ask, I did try them on the IEMA A70 mono amplifiers, and it sounded okay. That's a nice little amplifier for desktop. I didn't use that amp on the desktop. I think I mentioned that. I did bring the MXW70 in here, and then I used the FIO K15 headphone amp preamplifier to run these in the big room. That sounded really good. That little Cambridge amp is really good sounding, and I like the FIO too as well. But to give them the proper signal and the best opportunity to sound at their very best, I did use the Cambridge AXR 100, which at $700 is, again, a little bit more price appropriate, a little bit more of a common combination. And that's a great, receiver. Nice built-in DAC, phono preamp, all that wonderful stuff. But I found the best combination at the right price point to be the Advanced Paris XI75 integrated amplifier. That's 75 watts a channel. I think it's about $1,400 or $1,500. It has a glorious Advanced Paris house sound, and with these, that was a magic combination. It really was. You could get that little Advanced Paris integrated for $1,400, $1,500, add a decent little streamer to it like the Cambridge Audio MXN10, because it's got a great built-in DAC. The MXN10's got a DAC in it. You'd be done. You could add a turntable. The Advanced Paris has got a really good phono preamp in it. And you'd have a wonderful, a really, really good setup. I mean, something you could keep long-term and be happy with for not a lot of money. That's a great recommendation there. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about some of the music I used, and then I'll summarize my thoughts on sound quality. Well, for this review, I used tracks from my Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 2 playlist. There will be a title and a Qobuz link to that playlist in the video description. So keeping this an all Chesky family affair, because the family is amazingly musically talented. The first recording I used is from Lucca's twin sister, Paloma Chesky, and it's off her album called Memory, and it is Summertime. It's that famous Gershwin tune from Porgy and Bess. Paloma Chesky's voice is absolutely remarkable. I have seen in various reviews of her albums and so forth, she's been compared to people like Billie Holiday. She has this very emotive, very interesting voice, very interesting vocalization. She's one of those singers that doesn't really fit into any kind of category or box. She can do different styles, different eras, different genres, and she puts her own spin on it. When she sings the song, she kind of makes it her own, and I really think that's a very fascinating and very mature trait, especially for a young lady at 17 years old. There's also an awful lot of emotion in the way she sings. She puts a lot of herself into each song. It's really polished. Her voice is beautiful, and she can hang her vibrato out there, and it's just, oh man. She's one of those she's one of those singers that seems to have matured very quickly and kind of sings with a effortlessness and kind of a style and so forth that belies her age. As if she's been singing for a lot longer than she has. Really, really interesting. Now, what I want you to listen to in this recording is the way she works her voice. She has a very great range, a really good range, and she gives this very bluesy delivery. The record was produced by her father, David, and it's just a remarkable recording. Now, remember, David Chesky only ever uses a pair of microphones. There's no compression. There's no equalization. Everyone's in the studio at the same time, so the musicians, the singers, everybody's being recorded at once in one room. And I'm not sure where this was recorded. I know David likes to use the Buffalo studio in New York City quite often, but I don't know. So this one is really interesting because you can feel the energy of the musicians and Paloma's voice. Dan Peterson's drum kit, the drum sounds so natural. The attack sounds wonderful. The transients on this recording are amazing, and these did a great job of reproducing it. You'll also hear bass player Chris Ramirez's acoustic bass, and you can almost hear his hands on the strings and on the fretboard on the instrument. Just really remarkable. Again, the recording is super dynamic, and it is, it's very dynamic. Transients are really well done, and it's kind of a lush recording. It's really beautiful. So let's talk about the next track I used. So for the final track, surprise, surprise, I used a track from Lucca's dad, David Chesky. It's off his album, Graffiti Jazz, and it's Graffiti Jazz No. 5 is the name of the track. This is a real standout on this album for me. This is a very, very interesting album. There are no musicians on it other than David. There's no piano, no horns, no drum, it's drum machines. It is just David playing around with samples, again, drum machines, electronic bass stuff, lots of different layers of sound and different synthesizer instruments and everything else. And it's much less about a traditional kind of sound or sound. I mean, there's no real chord changes. It's more about kind of setting an atmosphere, a mood, a flow, kind of a rhythm to it. It's just really interesting. Now, this particular track, Graffiti Jazz number 5, kind of puts you in this very mysterious, kind of very moody zone. It's just so interesting. And I love electronica, and this is more than that. This is a combination of some really kind of well thought out, really well composed jazz sorts of themes and feelings combined with all of this interesting electronic stuff. Think of kind of like, it's got this very cool jazz vibe, but like it's processed through kind of a digital or cinematic lens. It's a really fascinating piece. There's some wonderful bass, low frequency in this. It is an amazing recording. It is crystal clean and dynamic, and the transients are wonderful. Just everything in it is well balanced and just so well done. There's also a part in it, I swear, there's a trumpet in there or a horn in there that it sounds so much like Miles Davis. It obviously isn't, but sounds like, has that kind of feel, that airiness. You know, Miles used to punctuate songs by just kind of throwing some notes out there and letting them hang. Well, it's got that kind of feeling. And again, there's some great bass in this, great rhythm, just overall a fascinating track, but a truly amazing album. So again, David Chesky, Graffiti Jazz number 5 off the Graffiti Jazz album. So let's do this. Let me tell you what I thought of these things, and then we'll wrap this up. So the Chesky LC-1s, this is a remarkable speaker, especially given its price at just around $1,000 for the pair. Bass response is good. It doesn't go super deep. I mean, it is a 50. They claim 50 hertz on the low end, and I don't know if that's a 3 dB down number or not. But they give you a sense of the bass going a little bit lower. I think those passive radiators help extend it a bit and certainly kind of give you that sense. Remember how small this cabinet is. Let me move this back over here because I had this out of the way for the album artwork. But remember how small this cabinet is. I mean, it's only 10 by 10 by 8. So it is really tiny to get any bass out of it. And for its size, it does a really good job. So the bass that was there, especially acoustic bass, electric bass, things like that, was really well done. Good texture, good articulation to it. There was good detail in it, especially on like, I think it's Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson's bass on Paloma's song Summertime, really well defined. And I never felt like I was wanting for anything on that. If I was listening to electronic music or something with a lot of bass response, yeah, these kind of, didn't deliver all the way down, but that's fine. They're not intended to do that. Now, mid bass, the drum attack, Daniel Peterson's drum attack on Paloma's song Summertime, oh my goodness, was that so well reproduced. That's a great recording anyway, and these just gave you all of it. These didn't hold back the quality of that recording. So great attack, great, sound of stick on the skin, those kinds of things, just marvelous sounding. All the way up through the mid bass into the mid range. Paloma's voice is so rich and textured, and you can hear kind of the breath of her voice and kind of just the normal vocalizations of her extending her notes or holding her notes, the vibrato. Just marvelous that she kind of will change pitch through, she'll bend the notes around to suit her style. And they showed it up really, really well. Just wonderful. Piano sounded natural. Everything sounded, cymbals sounded great. High frequencies are good. Transients were well reproduced. Given their price point, these are great performers. At this price category, are the best in the world? I don't know. There's a lot of really good speakers in and around $1,000, but these do something I think that only a couple of other speakers I've heard in this price category, and actually a little bit more expensive, the Bucharts I just recently reviewed, these do something that only a few of those speakers do, and that is image. Whoa, the image on these is remarkable. The first time I set them up and I sat down and I kind of got situated and I was picking my recordings and I put it on and it was like, what's going on? The image was just so well detailed. The soundstage was very large. It got out beyond, a little bit beyond the width of the speakers, proper height. The center image was just so laser focused. So depending on where the singer was or the microphone was to the instrument, it had the appropriate height. It had great depth. It had very good instrument placement, not razor sharp, but very good. Again, given the $1,000 price point, I was blown away by the soundstage and imaging on these things. They are champs at this price point on that. Really, really good. Really remarkable. Yeah, they're better than the Q Acoustics. They're better than the ELAC DB53s I've done. They are on a par, maybe a little bit different than the Bucarts. I think better than the dollies that I reviewed a while ago. As far as soundstage imaging, the dollies might be a little more full range. The Bucarts are certainly a little more full range. But at the price for these things, they're just remarkable. And if you have space considerations or on your desktop, they really are so good. Good in a small room. I mean, again, you can put them close to boundaries. That's not going to affect anything. For a small room, second system, maybe a youth system or a college dorm. I know Lucca, Lucca's a great guy. I've talked to him a bunch of times, and he's off at Carnegie Mellon, as I mentioned. So his roommate's really happy Lucca brought speakers. So he's got it all set up in his dorm room. That kind of environment, these things really shine. In a big room like my studio, they acquitted themselves way better than I expected. But obviously there would be some other choices. You know, I tend to be a floor standing guy, but I was really, really impressed with the quality of these. And I'm impressed with the build quality. I'm impressed with the design. I'm impressed with Lucca Chesky. This is a very interesting, very intelligent, very articulate, very driven young man. And I think we need to encourage gentlemen, people like him in our industry, because our industry, everybody looks like me, a bunch of old guys who think they know everything. I think we need new blood. We need to find new blood in this industry. And I'm hoping a product like this and a young man like Lucca Chesky can help reinvigorate our hobby and reinvigorate the audio industry. Just a remarkable young man, no question about it. So the Chesky LC-1s get a big thumbs up for me, and at their price, I think they're a steal. Absolutely. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you'd be willing to give me a like and your subscription. I'd appreciate that. Hopefully you'd be willing to ring the bell so you get notified when I put out another video. About 60% of you that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and it would help the channel a great deal. When I can show a manufacturer a good growing subscriber base, they're more willing to loan me product for review so we can share it together and have some fun with it. I would also like to take a moment and thank my channel members and my subscribers. Thank you guys so very much. There will be a link to the Chesky Audio website in the video description and in the pinned comment. I have no affiliation with them. There will be a link to the Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 2 playlist in the video description. There will be a link to the channel membership if you're so inclined in the video description and in the pinned comment. There is in the video description some affiliate links. There is in the video description a link to our community post playlist. Please check it out. Oh my goodness, there's some amazing music in that playlist. I found so many good music. You guys have wonderful taste. Thank you for putting that together. And if you have a really good playlist, send it to me and I'll add it to that. Comment, let me know your thoughts. I think we're at an interesting kind of inflection point, maybe, in our industry and in our hobby. We've got a 17-year-old young man, very intelligent, very driven young man who is rolled the dice, taken a chance to produce his own product and his vision of sound. I just think that's fascinating. I think Lucca Chesky is a fascinating young man. I've talked to him on the phone a bunch. I've gotten to know him reasonably well, and I am impressed with him. He is a very, very, very dynamic young man. And I think we need to encourage young men and young people to get into our hobby like that, to keep it going, because we are aging out. That's a problem. I worry about that a great deal. So the more young people we can get into the hobby, I think the better. So anyway, share your thoughts with me on that in the comments. That's everything I need to cover. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. Follow me on Instagram. I will post something about these on that. That's all of it. My name's Ed Homewood, and as you know, this is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel, and it is your turn. You need to go put on your favorite piece of music or pieces of music and just sit back, relax, and enjoy your day. Thanks so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day.